most all of you by now are aware of, have heard of, perhaps even have suffered from what is known as the Mandela Effect. Of course, the Mandela Effect is reference to a phenomenon of misremembering, a phenomenon of group misremembering, a phenomenon of change, a phenomenon of altered timelines, a phenomenon of altered realities where things that did happen all of a sudden didn't happen, and things that were said one way all of a sudden are now being said the other way. Somebody says it's real AF. Of course, I've been on Coast to Coast AM talking about the Mandela Effect. Been on a couple of other national shows talking about the Mandela Effect, and it's called the Mandela Effect because evidently Nelson Mandela died in 2013, and many people remember him dying many years before in prison and not dying as the president of South Africa. I have another question for you, ladies and gentlemen. I wonder if maybe you have considered this. I wonder if maybe you have thought about this fact, something that I think we may have missed the Mandela Effect by many years. What am I talking about? Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm talking about the McCartney Effect. And if you're on Twitter, Periscope, Facebook, you can't see this, but you can simply go over to my YouTube channel, jeffdarty.com, and you can see the video and you can participate in the chat. For those of you on Facebook, did we miss it by 78, 88, and 98 by almost 40 years? Was the Mandela Effect really the McCartney Effect? Many people believe and feel, and there's some interesting evidence that points to some shenanigans back in 1968 when they say, many people, that the real Paul McCartney died, was killed, depending upon the version of the story, and replaced by a double, the man that we know today as Sir Paul McCartney. Now, I did a lot of study on this. I did a lot of research on this. I benefited from the research of Tina Foster at plasticmacablogspot.com. Had her on my radio show a couple of times. But I could never wrap myself around the reality of him being killed and replaced. Didn't think there was enough evidence. Didn't think that it all added up. 2 + 2 wasn't coming up to 4 in my mind. And yet, there's some very striking physical evidence. There's some very striking physical changes between pre-1968 Paul, somebody on Twitter saying Billy Shears, and post-1968 Paul. The real watershed was the Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band album. And it was a different Paul in many ways physically before that, a different Paul in many ways mentally before that, a different Paul in many ways emotionally before that, a different Paul in many ways spiritually before that. I did write a book called Assault on Aquarius that offered my beliefs and theories that both Elvis Presley and Paul McCartney were subject to intense MK Ultra style mind control, even perhaps being temporally warped across time and space. And it could have produced the physical effects the changes in eyes, ears, lips, teeth, that at least one group of forensic scientists decided that the Paul before 68 and the Paul after 68 could not be the same individual. But what if there's another explanation? I don't think he got killed. I don't think he got replaced. I continue to believe that he suffered from MK Ultra, Tavistock style mind control, torture, manipulation, even temporal manipulation across time. But really, what is temporal manipulation across time? What is it, ladies and gentlemen? If not a Mandela effect, is that not the real definition of a Mandela effect? And perhaps we shouldn't be calling it the Mandela effect. Perhaps we should be calling it the McCartney effect. Perhaps the first real big split, the true big split between realities perceived by huge numbers of people one way, realities perceived by huge numbers of people in a different way. Perhaps it goes back not to 2013 and Nelson Mandela, but perhaps it goes back to 1968 and Paul McCartney. Was there a McCartney effect that took place in 1968, changing the man that we know as Paul McCartney, looking a little different pre-68, acting a little different before 68, sounding a little different, living a little differently, I should be saying, and then the man after 1968? And if the McCartney effect is real, then perhaps Sir Paul McCartney himself doesn't even realize that it took place. But when a man who's been left-handed all his life instinctively goes to air guitar with his right hand, there's something there. There's something going on. Changes in height, changes in eyes, changes in teeth, changes in lips, changes in ears. I documented it heavily in my book, Assault on Aquarius. Did he suffer from a McCartney effect? And let's take it another step. What if Paul was subject to MK Tavistock time mind control? What if he was subject to what I believe would be temporal mind control, temporal torture, warping him across time and space? Perhaps that practice caused a change in our timelines. Maybe the Mandela effect started. Maybe the Mandela effect started as the McCartney effect. It's a much more satisfying explanation to me than saying that he died in a car crash and was replaced by a double who just happened to be a really, really good singer and a really, really good writer and a really, really good actor. Sounded enough like the first guy to fool multiple millions of people. I just don't buy that scenario, even though I've studied it intensely. But I'm not so married to my own theory that McCartney suffered from mind control and temporal torture to rule out the fact that Mother of Dragon's eyes do change color, but never, ever in the way that McCartney's changed color. They always go from light to dark. The acid helped with the interdimensional travel in theory, and it was MK Ultra, the government, and Manson. I never thought about the LSD and the acid and time travel. Interesting. White Rabbit, the so-called deathbed confession of George Harrison's highly subjective, probably faked. Let's see what the rods say. What say you? Shall we go to the rods and see what the rods say? Was Paul McCartney, hope you can still hear, did Paul McCartney die and get replaced by a double? Rods say no. Are there remarkable physical changes in Paul McCartney pre and post 1968? Yes. Is the Paul of today the same Paul of pre 1968? Yes. Okay. Have there been physical changes in Paul, unexplainable physical changes in Paul pre 68 and today? Yes. Are the changes in Paul McCartney due to MK Ultra type of torture exclusively? No. Is it possible that there is a McCartney effect? Rods say yes. Somebody asked me to ask this over on Twitter. Is Paul McCartney alive in another dimension? That doesn't surprise me because watch this. Is Jeffrey Daugherty alive in another dimension? Yes, I think that there's different one of us. Is the Paul McCartney of today a clone? No, I say no to that. Interesting. So the rods are saying that we may be onto something. The rods are saying that we may be onto something. Is the Paul McCartney we know today a clone? No. Has Ringo already been dead once? No. Did John Lennon know the truth? Yes. Oh my. Ladies and gentlemen, there you go. That's some interesting stuff. I'm here to bring you to some water and hope that you'll decide to take a drink. I'm here to bring you to some objective information and hope that you'll decide to take a think. The McCartney effect. The Mandela effect. Which is it? I'm open to your opinions. JeffreyDaugherty.com, ChristianWhistleBlower@gmail.com. Let me know what you think. I think John knew. I wrote a book about it, but I didn't write the book about it, and maybe we didn't know all the right questions to ask or even the answers. I salute you on Twitter, Facebook, Periscope. I'll always ask good, interesting questions like you did. I salute you on Facebook. You are the gospel truth army. March on fearlessly. Mandela effect? McCartney effect? I don't know, but either way, let's unindoctrinate ourselves.